addition to the astronauts, you also need a launch vehicle. And so this launch vehicle, which is hugely heavy, 60,000 kilograms, is the rocket, basically. It probably won't be a 1950s style rocket as shown here, but it will look a little bit better than that, I'm sure. It's still going to weigh a lot, and that's what's going to get you from the surface of the Earth up into orbit, low Earth orbit, LEO, okay? But then you also need a spacecraft. This is just a representation. Yours probably won't look exactly like this, but let's go with it. A spacecraft that can travel from the Earth to the moon, land on the moon, and then ultimately take off from the moon and come back. So you need some sort of a lander. Spacecraft or lander, 5,000 kilograms, that's also going to be a necessary part of your mission or your trip. Okay, now what you get to do though is pick whatever seems most interesting to you in terms of equipment for your mission when you go to the moon. You could just take cameras. I would certainly take some good video cameras. Think of the TikTok videos that you could get on the moon, for example. I don't know anything about TikTok.
Late February, early March, there was all this talk about flattening the curve. And you probably saw something like this, right? So that people were saying we need control measures because without measures, we have a curve like that. And with measures, we have something like this that is more flattened. And so we reduce the peak of infection, the number of infections. And so this is more manageable for our healthcare system. And this was all over the place, some version of this. And this was very nice, but if you see this, there's no quantification of what this really means. So I saw these curves all over the place, but nobody was saying, well, if we do this control measure, we will achieve this reduction in the number of infections or this other reduction in the number of deaths. And so I started to begin to interested in quantifying that. So what does this mean, like in numbers, for real? And at the same time, I was in social media.
So these are just some of the questions that I'm interested in my research. So like I mentioned before, I am really interested in human behavior in these types of no-notice, fast-moving wildfires. So when I say no notice, if we think of other disasters like hurricanes, or maybe some instances flooding, we usually have an idea that something like that is going to come. It doesn't just kind of happen really rapidly, but in the past 10 or so years in California, there's been a number of these like very fast moving wildfires, which we don't really have a note.
Who the score is going to be calculated on, who is in your data set. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. That's what you're going to be working on in your challenges. We are going to be using a method called speculative fiction. And basically you will be given a scenario. And in that scenario, you'll be presented with a use case, and then you'll come up with the ways in which that use case can fail, but also the ways in which that use case is beneficial. Because when you think about it, technology is two-sided, it's double-sided. There are good things you can do with technology, but then there are also other things that can end up happening because the technology was misused, right? We talked about